Imagine waking up to headlines that the NBA is actively investigating the Los Angeles Clippers for allegedly finding a backdoor way to pay Kawhi Leonard beyond his max contract. An accusation so serious it could cost the franchise first-round draft picks. That's not just noise, that's a potential earthquake. Because if intent to skirt the cap can be proven, the punishment isn't a slap on the wrist, it's franchise-altering. Tonight, we're unpacking the timeline, the key players, the precedent, and exactly how a sponsor player endorsement can slide from normal business into rule-bending trouble. And we're going to zoom out to what this might mean for the entire league under the new, brutally restrictive second Apron era. If you love deep dive NBA breakdowns that cut through the confusion and focus on what actually matters, make sure you like this video, drop a comment with your take on the investigation, and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss the next update. Your support keeps these investigative breakdowns coming, and trust me, you'll want to be here when the next shoe drops. Let's set the table. Across the NBA, sponsor relationships are a normal part of the ecosystem. Teams have jersey patch partners, arena naming rights partners, official insert product partners, all of it. Players separately routinely have endorsement deals with brands, including brands that happen to sponsor their teams. That, by itself, is not illegal. In fact, those contracts often include a standard clause. If the player leaves the team, the endorsement ends. That makes sense. If you're no longer wearing that jersey or appearing in that market, your value to a team sponsor changes. So where's the line? The line is intent. If a sponsor deal is a legitimate marketing relationship, fine. But if it's structured or encouraged as a way to compensate a player beyond cap rules, especially to induce him to sign or stay, now you're stepping into circumvention territory. Here's the allegation that lit the fuse. In 2021, Clippers owner Steve Ballmer invested tens of millions of dollars into an environmental startup called Aspiration. Later that year, the Clippers and Aspiration announced a mammoth partnership. Hundreds of millions, complete with Aspiration on the jersey patch. Then in April 2022, reports say Kawhi Leonard signed a 4-year, $28 million endorsement deal with Aspiration. The claim, again, as reported and still under investigation, is that this was a no-show job, a contract where the athlete is allegedly paid regardless of actual deliverables, and that the true purpose was to compensate Kawhi outside of his NBA contract. If proven, that's a serious problem. But here's where it gets tricky because the rules don't ban all sponsor-player deals. What the league has to determine is intent. Was this a marketing partnership in name only, or a cleverly disguised workaround? To understand what might be at stake, look back at the Joe Smith Timberwolves saga in 1999. Smith and Minnesota agreed to below-market deals for multiple seasons with an under-the-table promise. Take less now, we'll make you whole later with a big contract using bird rights. That secret agreement explicitly stated the intent to circumvent the cap, to gain a competitive advantage. The NBA crushed them. Voided contracts, big fines, and most painfully, 5 years of first-round picks gone. That case is the North Star for penalties when the league decides someone played cute with the rules. But here's the difference. Joe Smith's arrangement was directly between player and team. In the Clippers situation, the alleged extra compensation flows through a team sponsor. Third-party money, not a team check. Legally, that nuance matters. Practically, the league will still ask the same question. Was the sponsor deal a real endorsement, or a mechanism to get around the cap? And this isn't the first time Kawhi's free agency orbit intersected with talk of off-court benefits. Back in 2019, when Leonard left the Raptors for the Clippers, reports claim Toronto lined up endorsement money, roughly 8 figures, at Kawhi's request to encourage him to stay. The Raptors owner even flagged concerns to Adam Silver, and the league didn't act. If nothing else, that shows these sponsor-aligned endorsements are not rare, and the league hasn't viewed them as illegal by default. Add the Lakers to the 2019 context. Reporting from that summer indicated Kawhi's camp surfaced additional asks: housing, private plane access, off-court deals. The Lakers reportedly declined some of those as rule crossing. Whether that was caution or principle, it tells you big-ticket extras are often on the table in superstar recruitment. and everyone in those rooms is hypersensitive to where creative ends and impermissible begins. So what are the Clippers saying now? Their public stance is essentially, we didn't do anything wrong, and if anyone should be under the microscope, it's Aspiration, the company that later faced fraud allegations and, according to the Clippers, failed to meet the obligations of their team sponsor agreement. In other words, don't confuse our partnership with their misconduct, and don't assume that a sponsor's separate endorsement with a player equals cap evasion. That defense leans on two pillars. First, that the team and the sponsor are independent entities. Second, that sponsor-player deals with team-adjacent brands are common and often contingent on a player remaining with that team. The question the league must answer is narrower and tougher. Was there coordination or intent to use that sponsor deal as a way to pay Kawhi more than the cap allows? And even if the Clippers are cleared, the league could still decide the gray area is too gray and tighten the rules for everybody. Zoom out to the modern CBA. The second apron isn't just a number, it's a choke point. Cross it, and you trigger a cascade of penalties and restrictions that shrink your flexibility. That environment naturally incentivizes teams to search for legal edges and, yes, tempts some to test the boundaries. The alleged Clippers arrangement with Kawhi is interesting precisely because Leonard was already on a max deal. If you're trying to lower cap hits via outside money, that's not how you do it. You'd be more interested in a player who takes a discount on the front end while being made whole elsewhere. Which is why some observers are now eyeing other situations around the league for comparison, not to declare guilt, but to ask the logical follow-up. If someone wanted to game the system, what would it actually look like? Consider the Jalen Brunson extension example as a thought exercise. In 2024, Brunson signed an extension that, by all accounts, left money on the table relative to what he could have gotten by waiting. The narrative at the time was team-friendly move to preserve flexibility. That's perfectly legal on its face. Players can choose to take less. The only way it becomes an issue is if off-book incentives existed to compensate for that discount. An allegation no one has proven and that we are not asserting. But conceptually, that's the mold that would offer real cap advantage. Keep the cap number lower while making up the difference through other channels. By contrast, with Kawhi on a max, extra sponsor money wouldn't reduce his cap hit. It might influence his decision to stay, but it wouldn't create immediate cap flexibility. That nuance matters and could factor into how the league ultimately views intent and competitive advantage. So, what does punishment look like if the league finds intent? Think draft capital. Think fines. Think voided elements of a contract. History tells us the NBA prioritizes competitive integrity, and draft picks are the league's favorite deterrent. But David Stern is not Adam Silver. Stern's NBA came down like a hammer in the Joe Smith case. Silver's NBA has sometimes preferred the forward-looking guardrails over retroactive scorch earth. Look at how the league handled tampering. Once second-round picks started disappearing, the early free agency wink-wink frenzy noticeably cooled. That's a sign the league likes to codify expectations and then enforce them cleanly. For the Clippers case, that could mean a future where sponsor-player deals tied to team relationships require pre-approval, clear deliverable logs, and explicit firewalling from team influence. The NBA could demand audit trails, emails, scopes of work, fulfilled appearances, content created, posts made. So if a player earns X dollars, there's a tangible marketing footprint behind it. No show, no pay. And if a team was found coordinating, that's where penalties come in. Another signal to watch, do other teams start chirping? If rival owners and GMs go public with "this crosses the line," it's a sign the practice isn't widespread, and the league has political cover to drop the hammer. If we hear crickets, that silence may speak volumes. A lot of teams could be operating in adjacent gray areas and won't risk inviting scrutiny. Let's dive deeper into how the league might evaluate intent. Step 1. Timeline. Ballmer invests in Aspiration in 2021. Aspiration becomes the jersey patch sponsor the same year, in a deal reportedly worth hundreds of millions. In April 2022, Kawhi's endorsement with the same company is reported at $28 million over 4 years. None of those facts by themselves prove misconduct, but the sequencing and connections create a matrix the league will map. Owner investment, Arrow sponsor, partnership, Arrow stars endorsement. Step 2. Deliverables. What exactly did Kawhi agree to do? Appearances, ads, social posts, community events, sustainability campaigns? If the scope is robust and there's evidence he fulfilled it, the no-show characterization weakens. If the scope is vague and there's little to no performance, the league will lean harder toward sham consideration. Step 3. Communications. Were there emails, calls, or meetings connecting team personnel to the structure and numbers of the sponsor deal? Did anyone on the team encourage, facilitate, or negotiate the endorsement in a way that suggests quid pro quo for staying? Step 4. Comparables. Are there similar deals with other players on other teams? How do the amounts and deliverables line up? If the Kawhi deal wildly exceeds market norms without proportional marketing activity, that's a red flag. Keep this in mind. The NBA doesn't need criminal court certainty. They need sufficient evidence to conclude competitive integrity was compromised. The bar is lower than beyond a reasonable doubt, and the remedy is whatever the league deems appropriate under the CBA. Now about aspirations troubles. The Clippers have positioned the sponsors' alleged internal issues as a reason not to infer cap gamesmanship. They didn't even meet their contractual obligations to us, is the subtext. That argument can cut both ways. On one hand, a partner with shaky operations might indeed fail to execute normal marketing activations, creating the appearance of a no-show, even if the player was willing. On the other, a chaotic sponsor environment is fertile ground for misaligned and poorly documented relationships. Exactly the kind the league wants to police. The NBA's job is to parse chaos into intent. Was the mess the reason nothing happened? Or was the nothing happened the point? If the league tightens rules, expect 3 big changes. First, mandatory pre-clearance for any endorsement tied to a team sponsor over a certain dollar threshold. Second, explicit bans on any compensation that scales with team decisions. Signing, opting in, waiving a trade kicker, etc. Third, transparent reporting. Think an annual ledger of sponsor player payments connected to teams, reviewed by the league office. We should also talk player agency. Superstars will always try to maximize earnings across every channel. From a player's perspective, if a team's ecosystem increases your market value, bigger market, more visibility, stronger brand partners, why shouldn't you cash in? The league's answer is simple. Cash in, but cleanly. The cap is the cap. You can't have a shadow economy where third-party dollars function as an extension of team payroll. That's the line. And ironically, clarity can help players as much as teams. A clean, league-approved endorsement framework lets stars get paid without suspicion, and lets teams recruit without risking a scandal. Here's a hypothetical that shows why clarity matters. Suppose a non-Clippers brand with no formal team sponsorship offers Kawhi the exact same $28 million for real, documented marketing work. No complaint, right? The controversy exists precisely because the money flows from a brand in the team's sponsorship orbit, and because the deliverables are disputed. That proximity is what triggers the league's antennae. Where does this go from here? There are 2 most likely outcomes. 1. Nothing concrete comes of the investigation. Without smoking gun evidence of coordination or intent, the league may conclude this lives in the gray but doesn't cross the line. Much like 2019, when the Raptors raised concerns and the NBA didn't act. 2. The league uses this as a springboard to implement tighter, brighter line rules. That doesn't necessarily mean the Clippers get whacked. It could simply mean the NBA says, going forward, here's exactly how this must work. That outcome would mirror how the league addressed early tampering windows, by setting clear boundaries and enforcing them with draft pick penalties for violators. Could the Clippers still face real penalties? Absolutely. If the investigation finds coordination, or a quid pro quo to circumvent the cap. Draft picks, fines, and reputational damage are all on the table. The Joe Smith precedent looms as a worst-case template, even if the mechanics differed. Here's what to watch in the coming weeks. First, leaks. When investigations heat up, details tend to slip. If you start hearing about emails, meeting notes, or text messages tying team personnel to the structure of the sponsor deal, that's your canary in the coal mine. Second, the chorus. If rival executives start publicly calling for discipline, expect the league to act. Peer pressure matters. Third, policy memos. If the NBA begins quietly circulating guidance to teams about sponsor player deals, that's a tell that the league is moving towards systemic changes regardless of the Clippers' outcome. Fourth, parallel cases. If reporters begin scrutinizing other teams' star-adjacent sponsorships, especially those paired with team-friendly contracts, that means the scope is widening. The biggest irony? If the Clippers' arrangement didn't actually lower their cap burden, because Kawhi was already on a max, then even a finding of sponsor coordination wouldn't fit the classic competitive advantage mold. It would be more about inducement to sign or stay than about cap math manipulation. The league will have to decide whether that kind of inducement is enough to warrant severe punishment. Let's close with the broader stakes. The NBA's product thrives on parity theater. Any given June could belong to your team if you draft smart, develop, and spend within the rules. The second Apron system is the league's newest attempt to keep that theater believable. If third-party money becomes a shadow cap, that entire project collapses. On the other hand, over-policing legitimate endorsements would punish normal commerce and hamstring players' personal brands. That's the needle the NBA must thread. Protect competitive integrity without choking off legitimate market value deals between superstars and sponsors. So when you see the next headline, league interviews witnesses, Clippers provide documents, sponsor deal under review, remember, the question isn't whether sponsor player deals are allowed. They are. The question is whether this one, and others like it, were used as tools to pay beyond the cap, with intent and coordination. That's the fulcrum. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit so more fans see it, drop a comment with your read on the investigation. Do you think this is a one-off or the tip of a league-wide iceberg? And subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up. We'll keep tracking the paper trail, the policy shifts, and the politics around the league. Because whether this ends in penalties or policy, the ripple effects are going to reshape how teams, stars, and sponsors do business in the NBA's second Apron era. Stay locked in.